You're perfect.
So people want to grab, everybody has something to eat, right? You're all munching away. We're ready to start. Thank you for coming. These kinds of events are really, really great to us. You know, any kind of cross-pollinating between us and other organizations, we totally endorse. So any of you have other ideas, you know, always bring them to us on the board, to me over the board, and we'll try to make something happen. Just because I think it's about creating community and keeping the fabric here, you know, connected. So I want to, so I think I'm going to just introduce Luke. Everybody knows Luke.
Everybody knows Luke.
Yeah.
Great, yeah, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for being here. When we initially were approached by Sam and Jean from the Arts Council, we were really excited because we've been looking over the course of this past year at lots of different ways that we can partner with amazing groups that are doing really great work in this valley. So what we started brainstorming was what it would be like to talk about the ways that people connect with not only our river, the Mad River, but also all waters. And we started really deliberating what that could look like. And we thought that it would be interesting to hear from people who have different ways of connecting and engaging with water, and where that has been, you know, really a seminal part of leading them to the career path and the work that they do at this moment in time. So part of what you're hearing tonight is from people who work in conservation, who work as scientists, who are fishing guides. You're also going to have a little video that is of 3rd and 4th graders, so sort of reminding us of the childhood joy of connecting with water. And that is kind of the purpose of this, is just sort of sharing those experiences. And we're going to also engage you and invite you to sort of think about your personal connections with the Mad River and with all water. And in between, we have a Mad River Watch volunteer, and Marcy, who also is our AmeriCorps with Friends of Mad River, will be reading some of her haikus. For those of you that don't know, Mad River Watch is a volunteer program that monitors the health and water quality of the Mad River and many of its tributaries. And Ruth has been doing this for quite some time. We actually couldn't remember exactly how long she's been doing it, but for at least the past 5 years, every time she goes to her site, she writes a haiku. So you'll notice that we have these haikus, and Marcy's going to do an introduction about that. I'm going to introduce everybody right now, just so you can sort of know who some of the speakers are. Sitting closest to me is Kenny Perot. Many of you probably know Kenny. Kenny is one of the founding members of Friends of the Mad River, and has worn a lot of hats in this community over the course of her time living here. And we asked her to really think and speak to the origins of her desire to do something like start Friends of the Mad River, and what that work has looked like over the course of the past 30 or so years. Sitting next to Kenny, we have Rob Jordan. I actually met Rob at a family cider pressing party, and we immediately hit it off and started talking about fishing. And what we really, what I was particularly connected to was just the idea of how he's worked as a fishing guide in lots of different places. And it's a different take, but for any of you who know any fisher, any anglers, fishermen or fisherwomen, you know that they are studious. They love the river. They understand the river in ways that many people who are casual observers don't necessarily understand it. And so, really interested to hear his perspective. And then sitting here, we have Rebecca Deal, who is a fluvial geomorphologist. Did I get that right? Close enough. And works at the University of Vermont, and essentially studies how rivers move sediment, how they naturally move across the landscape, and especially in a time where we are facing flooding like we have seen historically, but we're seeing those happen much more rapidly in repetition. It's an incredibly important job, and looking at ways that we can use science to inform our practices as human beings who are living on this landscape, who are trying to thrive and build a resilient community. So, and then I also mentioned that we have a little quick video from some 3rd and 4th graders. You'll find them to be darling and really awesome. Marcy and I spent a day out in the woods with them. and they're pretty cute. Hopefully you can understand most of them. Some of them, there's a lot of racket going on in the background because we're outside, but I hope you enjoy. So the first thing we're going to start with is...
Can you go into lights?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. So for many years, there's been an effort in this valley called Ridge to River. And it's really this idea of how, as an entire community, there are political boundaries, but even just talking with Rebecca, like just because your kids go to Facein School doesn't necessarily mean that that's where your post office mailing address is, and you might like be living in one town but receive your mail in another town, and everything's a little funky here. We have different villages with different prerogatives, but we're all connected by a watershed. And a lot of times, if we think about the problems that we face with regards to flooding or many of the other ways that we address community-based issues, it's self-defeating if we don't think inclusively about all of the people that are working together. How can we share our resources and our skill sets and think like a watershed? How can we imagine that what happens on the top of every ridge in this surrounding area is impacting the people at the bottom of the river valley? And so that's part of the work of a watershed organization, is helping people to understand where they fit in that entire process. And so what we're going to do is just a quick little visualization. I'm going to be leading you. And what I would encourage you to do, if you want to, you can look at this imagery. We actually tried really hard to use our own videos, but the self-looping of a 17-minute video of what it's like on the top of the Long Trail, it was way too glitchy, and so we just got this nice, relaxing, meditative YouTube video. But you can picture yourself in your favorite spot. Now, you can close your eyes, you can look at this scene if you like, but I want you to, for a moment, to picture your favorite location in the Mad River Valley. It might be on top of a ridge, it might be next to the river, it might be overlooking a beautiful view. Hopefully it's somewhere that you've shared lots of memories with people that you enjoy and love. I want you to think about that spot. Think about the water and where it is in proximity to where you imagine yourself being. Does the water move beside you, underneath you, around you? I want you to imagine each of those little rivulets as the droplets that they started at. Try to imagine and follow the path of that water back up the hillside, up the ridge line, to the top where it first landed and greeted the earth. Imagine the path of each of those individual drops of water as they fall from the sky, as they connect together one at a time, as they eventually gain momentum and with the pull of gravity start to move downhill. Picture some of them moving across the surface of the land in the many brooks and streams that are all over our landscape. Some of that water gets absorbed and held under the earth, purifying it, storing it in an aquifer, eventually bubbling out in a seep string somewhere along the landscape. Imagine what it encounters as it moves through the land. Imagine the animals that it interacts with, the plants that it nourishes, the trees that it passes under. Think about the homes, the roads, the driveways, the other signs of humans as they've moved into this landscape. How that changes the path of that water as it moves. In some ways that can be positive, in other ways maybe not so positive. if you trace the path of this water all the way to that place that is so special to you, it's amazing to think about the various different forms that it's taken, the ways that it's interacted with the landscape, who's seen it, tasted it, splashed around in it. Travel back to that special place, wherever it is for you. Now, an invitation to each of you is that the next time that you go to that place, follow the same process, the same visualization. Imagine where that water is in proximity to where you sit or stand or lay down. Imagine where that water that's moving past you originated, where it came from, where it's going. Imagine its journey. I think if you do that, you might find a greater appreciation for its path, and that you are but one step along its journey from the sky to the ocean. And thinking about the bigger picture of our watershed, what is it that each of us can do to help preserve, to help purify, to help keep the water that moves through this landscape and connects us all as the sacred nourishment that many of us feel in connection with it. So I invite you just to sort of come back to the room. And obviously this is meant to be, a spring thunder shower. But imagine the path of the snow that we're experiencing over the past couple of days. Think about what will happen to that if we get rain, what will happen to that if we get more snow. Think about the journey of that snow over the course of a year. I know I've seen several of you out in the mountains and enjoying, through social media, all of this wonderful transition into winter. But water's all around us, and especially in this valley, it's defined the way that humans have lived here forever, and will always continue to impact the ways that we choose to live on this landscape. So hopefully this allows us all to be a little bit more mindful and attentive to the way that we connect with water and the way that water depends on us as the stewards of this landscape. So thank you for that. I'm going to introduce now Marcy to come up. It's a little tricky to advance that. Sometimes I think you might have to actually go out of the slideshow to go. Oh, there you go. And Marcy's going to tell you a little bit about our haiku writer.
Hello, everybody. As Luke introduced me, I'm Marcy. I'm an AmeriCorps member serving with Friends of the Mad River. And it's my pleasure this evening to be reading a selection of haikus from our volunteer, Ruth Lacey. Ruth Lacey is a citizen scientist who participates in our Mad River Watch program. As Luke said, the Mad River Watch program is a water quality program that we run every summer, and it's the longest continuously run volunteer-supported program of its kind in the nation. For the past 5 years, Ruth has been returning to the same site on Mill Brook, and in addition to collecting her data, she has also elected of her own accord to write a haiku and take photos each time she's at the site to reflect on her visit. So as we return to her poems over the course of this evening, I hope that they call you to just reflect on the power of knowing and returning to a place and the connection that it can help us find both to ourselves and to the world around us. So for your first haiku from July 25th, 2022. Beauty on gray day, passing storm, water, and life, nature made vibrant.
And Ruth can't be with us tonight. Many of you maybe know Ruth, and if you do, her husband has been battling cancer for quite some time, and so she's with him. And so she was very excited that we were going to be sharing her poetry, wanted to be here, but is unfortunately not able to join us. So we gave each of our panelists an incredible challenge, which is to choose only 5 photos, which is a big task, that align with maybe 5 stories, each roughly a minute in length, to try to encapsulate their connection to water. And so our first panelist, the first person to speak is going to be Kinney, coming up and speaking about starting Friends of the Mad River, her long connection with water, and how she has come to stand for this river for so many years. And really excited to hear. You'll notice that there may be like slightly more than 5 photos, and they might go slightly more than 5 minutes. But we wanted to really try to boil down the essence of people's connections with the landscape and with water. So, Kenny, welcome.
So, I was given various tasks for this evening that morphed and evolved over time, which was great, because each one I could talk way too long about and bore you to death. But I loved the question of, when did I start loving water? Well, I think I always loved water, but I zoomed into when I was 3.5 years old, and I was sitting on this beach in Stonington, Connecticut, where my mother had taken us for a month in the summer. And this is the Wattawannock Club, which is a Pequot name for a place, the roosts or breeding place for herons in the Pequot language. We all called it the Wanna Vomit Club. So I was sitting on that beach with a lot of other kids and a lot of other moms and dads, and I toddled off, unbeknownst to them, and I went into the water, and I went under the water, and I just started swimming. And I actually still remember it, because I was like, whoa, my eyes were open, I'm swimming through eelgrass and junk and all sorts of stuff, and it was totally different sound. I could move in any direction I wanted. It was just a whole new world, and I loved it. My whole body loved it. On this dock, there were some stink boats and other boats that would tie up there. And sometimes there would be a lifeguard there, and he'd blow his whistle 3 times, and that meant get out of the water immediately. And that's because someone on a boat had flushed their head and something was floating by. Now, whether this was the beginning of my interest in Mad River Watch and testing for E. coli, I don't know, but it could be. After that, I went to camp in New Hampshire, and I was in the youngest group, and I swam the longest, I could swim the longest of any camper there underwater holding her breath. And then I went to camp on Lake Champlain, and the first day they had us all jump in the water, and they had some boats, and they said, swim as far as you can, we'll fish you out when you're tired. And after a while, I was still swimming with one other person, and they finally went, could you just get in the boat? So water has been important to me my whole life. Is this going to change?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, just give me a thumbs up when you.
Oh, I thought it would automatically do it. Okay, so then when I moved to the Mad River Valley, I first moved here, well, I first came here in 1969, but then I moved here permanently in 1979. This was my backyard, right in Warren Village. That's Freeman Brook, or Kids Brook, known to you, you have to be 13 or under to fish it. That's Katie Sullivan, teacher up at the Warren School, also on the board of Friends of the Mad River. And my kids grew up learning all sorts of stuff from this river. I learned all sorts of stuff. And the house is in the floodplain. So I really learned the intimacy of what it means to live by a brook in this valley. In the spring, the ice, the whole thing would be solid ice in the early days, and then in the spring, when it warmed up, you'd hear the crack go through the village as it broke up. It was amazing, like shotguns going off. So the intimacy was a big part of it for me. We had a little Tykes plastic picnic table that someone had given my boys, and it was a little too close to the stream. And one day my neighbor on Flatiron called up and said, "Kenny, we just saluted your picnic table." And I went running out and tried to grab it, went zooming off by the Warren store and downstream. And I saw it 3 years later at a daycare center in Ridgeview. And I knew it because my boys had made a mark on the side of it. We are connected in more ways than you can imagine. The things that I have pulled out of this stream, probably 5 hibachis, a huge shovel that's used to clean out culverts, a giant toolbox. The most outrageous, I thought, was an outboard motor. I mean, what? This is not exactly. We lived with mink coming up. I've seen every animal you can imagine in my backyard, right in Warren Village. I'm sorry, keep going. You should just make me keep going. So one of the things that I particularly love about this place is I grew up in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, to figure out where to go, I had maps in my mind. It was relatively flat. I had to memorize, turn by this person's house, or, get on the train there. But here, this is taken from the Vista Trail up behind the Warren School. And, we know where we are on this landscape. It's very human scaled. Most of us have skied, all the mountains. We've hiked up to all the tops. We know where we are. The Green Mountains, the Northfield Range, the Mad River starting in Granville in a beaver swamp, the outflow into the Winooski and Moortown. I just love how I know where I am and how connected we are because of flooding and stuff like that. I've been flooded numerous times. Not to hurt the house, but it was exciting, I'll put it that way. So the history, keep going. So this is a whole bunch of stuff so I could talk forever, but we put up these topos at one point. This is Friends of the Mad River, put up topos to say, where do you live in the watershed? We've done this posters out there, meet your neighbors, all the animals. Basically, Friends of the Mad River started at a time when Sugarbush was planning to do snowmaking. And their plan to put a snowmaking pond in a wetland right next to the river, although I don't have training in river science, the way some people do, I did have botanical and scientific training. I just sat there and I kept going to meetings and going, this just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you, when a river moves from one side of the valley floor to the other over time, would you put such an important piece of infrastructure for the ski industry right next to the river? And what's going to happen when the river goes through it? They thought I was a thorn in their side. It was a hard time for me. And my kids, actually, because people thought I was against Sugarbush, which I was not. But a group of us decided there is so much interest in the river. Let's look at everything that affects the health of the river, all over the watershed, forests, driveways, whatever it was. Let's look at all of it, come up with a conservation plan, make some recommendations and do it. And that's what this thing is our conservation plan. I thought that would take 2 years to do a conservation plan with input from the community, what they wanted to see, and then we do it and that would be done. So that plan came out in 95, we were formed in 1990, we're still doing it. So we've done lots of different things in different ways, but as far as the arts go, we did an oral history early on to, just because that was really fun, the stories of how this this valley has changed. We've done a calendar with local artists and photographers. We actually were involved in the first week of the Valley Arts in August, where we had something every day. We like all of that. And I think the reason is that science and art, to me at least, often makes the invisible visible. So from a nerdy science point of view, we have things like this stencil. All storm drains flow into the river. So you paint that by a storm drain, and people might think about what they're putting down. Okay, you shouldn't keep moving me along. So I just wanted to end on, oh, by the way, can you go back? So, at one point I was roped into, I shouldn't say roped into, I was invited to get politically active, mostly around natural resource issues. And one of the things that people started asking me, well, why are you doing this? I hate laws, I don't want to, I went, hey, we all want to do what we want to do, I get that, me too. However, some of the things we do affect each other, affect ourselves, affect neighbors. So I put up this picture, that's burning bush, or euonymus, that I have pulled out and hung up in a tree by its roots. So invasive species are one of the things. It's another example. We plant things that we think are beautiful. I've done it. I think, we've all done stuff like that. And we don't think about what that could mean for the health of us, for instance. And many people who I know have burning bush, barberry, honeysuckles, other things like that, say, oh, it's not invasive, it hasn't started growing around here. And I go, well, you have to think of the vectors. You have to think of what's spreading it. Wind, water, road crew, is it vegetative or? So burning bush has little berries on it, birds eat it, and they fly off and deposit it, beautifully fertilized all over the place. And I have pulled it out deep in the woods. So it's just one of those things where it's been interesting to learn and to continually learn. And last picture, and I'll sit down. It's been really fun working in the community with lots of people. So whether it's planting trees or another, I thought I'd end with another one of my swimming spots, which is the pond up at our camp. And that's it. And I could go on a lot longer, but I won't.
Thank you, Katie.
Yes, thank you.
So back to another haiku relating to some of the topics you touched on. This is from July 12th in 2021. Tree down at test site, still green, so must be recent. Birdsong, babbling brook.
So next up, we're going to invite Rob Gordon to come and speak about the perspective of an angler in connection with rivers and waters. Yeah.
Thanks everyone for inviting me. My name is Rob Jordan. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We've been here 12 years. We moved from Flathead Valley in Montana, where it was amazing. Let's see, I've always been connected to water. My sign is Capricorn, go Capricorns. So it's kind of coming around, and the Capricorn sign is part goat, part fish. So it's always been kind of, there's a story that says Capricorns go to the top of the mountain to teach about the sea. I don't know. But I do know that fishing has been kind of, like you were saying, it connects a lot of things, metaphysics and biology, and it just gets really deep. And it just brings you to a place where, everything just kind of expands. And so I'm grateful to be around clean water. It's such a privilege. Just water in itself, to have around you is a privilege. To swim in it, to fish, to see things living in it that you don't even expect to be there, whether it's cellular or, it's, little bugs or whatever. It's amazing. So I just wanted to share that. We definitely come across things in places where people never get to see. Whether you flip the boat and you're kind of looking for help or whatever, or you got your feet up and you're dangling downstream. We're just jumping off a cliff like we do a lot here. It's pretty amazing. So a lot of these pictures I've taken, and I've been fortunate enough to share them with people, but that's me. Someone took this of me in the main stem of the flathead. This is just a fall day. I'm trying to get out as much as possible and share it with as many people as possible, but nobody ever wants to go. So it's like, okay. So this is, once I got, let's see, I started fishing when I was really young in upstate Pennsylvania. I went to college in upstate Pennsylvania. We would go fishing the Lake Ontario trips after frat parties in college. And then I moved to Yellowstone. And to fish in Yellowstone, you needed to fly fish. So I learned how to fly fish. There was snow on the ground still, but I practiced in the snow. And I started fishing in the snow. And I didn't catch fish for 5 years. So, but I kept at it. And I worked at Glacier Institute, so we brought kids out, we tried to show them how to fish, but you go to Montana, and the kids know more about fishing than you do. So it's kind of tricky. But, so I just kept pursuing, and I went to guiding school in Montana, and I just kind of wanted to go. It's like, once you get the bug, the experience bug, you kind of keep going and going and going. It just, you kind of perpetuates the explosion of the mind, so to speak. So I went from Montana to Alaska, and I guided a few summers in Alaska, and I took this picture on the Aleutian Peninsula, and this is the Sapsup River, which goes into Moose Lake, which is, it's pretty much the end of a salmon run, and amazing. We had wolves come out of nowhere, we had deer come out of nowhere, reindeer, where they're almost like the moose here, where you come up to their chest and they'll just knock you over. Yeah, so they just come out of nowhere. Brown bear, we had to carry guns on us all the time because they just came out of nowhere. But I got dropped off at this place first thing in the morning, and the airplane took off, and I'm standing there like, and it was so peaceful out there that miles and miles away you could hear the plane coming along, and you're just going, yes, that he's coming back together. Because, well, you can catch fish, but it'll be tricky otherwise. So, let's see, what else we have? This is local. So, Vermont's interesting. When we got here, we came here right after Irene, which was devastating. We lived in Rochester, and it was just really sad to drive through the valley and through Vermont as a whole. But I fished, and the amazing thing is there was fish, even after Irene. So now there's kind of, your road washed out, but I'm gonna go fish this flood, So I go up to the tertiary where the brook trout are so resilient, you wouldn't think there'd be any fish after these floods, and you catch brook trout. It's amazing. And secret spots, I worked at Sugarbush for 12 years, very contentious, because I know what the snowmaking does to the river and the system. So that's a whole other story, but it's, there's brook trout up there, and you're going, how the heck did they get up there? Like after all these floods, how did these fish get up there? And they're not stocked. So, but Otter Creek is not a creek, it's a river. It's a pretty dang big river too, There's something about the East Coast where the creeks and rivers are kind of like, they're not interchangeable. But this is Twin Bridges, so this is, let's see, I want to say Ferrisburg or Jens area, but there's over 20 species of fish in here, and you can fish this year round, and it's pretty spectacular. I'm glad I get to share it with people. So. This is the mat, yay! And so this picture was taken from River Road, pretty much maybe a little bit south of Pony Farm, but wintertime, I'm always looking at the river. It's just in my heart. And I'm always looking at the mountains too, because they're so interconnected. You can't be in the water and not wonder where it's coming from or what's in it. It's just life. And this is like people swimming here, we swim in here, and yeah, I'm grateful for it. So, this is one of my favorite, I don't know if you call it an inspirational quote or whatever, but I got to bring a group of people and this young lady out, of course she could care less. I was more so worried about her not falling in the water, and just kind of like keeping her back. But you're still learning, like every single day you're learning. I think that's the beauty of it, is like it's turned me into a lifelong learner. It's turned me into a citizen scientist. Like you can't not appreciate what's around you when you get to sit here and just be taken away by sound and stuff. It's awesome. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. Thanks, Luke, for having me, man. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're turning to another haiku from Ruth. I picked this one specifically because I think I really liked that the simple 3 lines of a haiku, she was able to communicate so much resiliency that is a feature of our river. So from June 27, 2022, Japanese knotweed. It's everywhere, but I still see wildflowers.
So this is the video that, it's a short clip, it's actually a much longer video that you can find on our YouTube if you would like to see it. But we spent some time with students from all of the Valley Elementary schools. We hosted our first river exploration day where we brought them to the river. We had an opportunity to go electrofishing with them and show them all of the species that exist in the water. You don't actually kill the fish when you electrofish. It stuns them and then you can sort of see what's there. We had a really fun scavenger hunt, and we had supporters from Vermont Fish and Wildlife and Trout Unlimited helping out. This is a group that we've also worked with, so part of our work is in schools and is educational outreach, specifically targeting our 1st and 2nd and 3rd and 4th graders, the youngest stewards of this community, because as I was chatting with Misha the other day, sustainability is not just, if we're fighting to preserve the Mad River, what is it that we're preserving it for? And it is those future generations. And the more that we can instill in these young people values of appreciation and connection with nature, the more likely they are going to be the ones who take up that fight in their lifetimes as well. So apologies if it's a little tricky to hear, but hopefully it's okay. Uh-oh.
The current moves and you can go and tubes the go down the river. You can swim in it, you can catch fish. Do fishing in rivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also go fishing, and I also have a river right next to our house, and my dog also jumped in it. Also, I like making nature runs and see if they grow or a brook in the backyard.
Oh, you have a brook in the backyard. What's your favorite part about the brook in your backyard?
I get to go fishing in the deepest part. It's white and kind of cold. Well, we have two big swimming pools at our house.
Yeah.
I really like it's really refreshing and fun because we have a hot tub right next to the river. So like to jump, get in the hot tub, get it for a while, and jump out. I like swimming. But you can fish in lakes and
Oh, you like to collect rocks?
Yeah, that's pretty much like one of my favorite things. Swimming and fishing. My favorite part about the river is catching fish.
Yeah. Where do you like to fish on the river?
Like in a deep spot. I guess. Yeah, I'd have to say swimming. I love about the river. It's like in summer, it's like good time. It's a good place to have a good time.
Where did you go? Maybe all the way away? Yes. Pardon the technical difficulties here.
My mistake.
Like everyone did all the way out there.
When you said that.
Can't swim in that river, that's for sure.
If you haven't grabbed a treat, this would be a great time to do that.
That's not, yeah.
It's just.
Thank you for bearing with us. So when I went to go and pick out haikus, I was really interested to see what Ruth had written at the times, because our sampling season goes over the summer, and as you know, the past 2 summers, we've had really significant flooding events that have coincided with times when our volunteers would be out sampling. So I was looking through and I was really curious to see what her reflections were maybe in those periods of more stress and uncertainty about the state of the river. And I liked this one because I thought it brought some brevity to the situation. So, July 10th, 2023, rain, rain, go away. Too much to sample today, come back another day.
So our final presenter, yeah, you come on up, is Rebecca Deal. She's also one of our board members, and we've been really fortunate to learn from her expertise in the ways that rivers moved, not only in this river, and you'll see some pictures from all over the world, but really thinking about ways to be proactive as a community in the ways that we interact with the river, where we build, how we live. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. I promise not to get too technical. Fluvial geomorphology will be as technical as I get. But I am, in essence, a river scientist, and my work tries to understand, as Luke so nicely put it, kind of how water and sediment sort of interact and create the rivers that we see and the landscape around the rivers. And my work is really motivated to do better science, to more effectively manage these rivers. So that impacts all of us, right? And I put this up, I know this isn't sort of that pretty picture and that sort of, that snapshot that we're looking for, but I put it up because I think this is really emblematic of the work that I do and how this impacts us. So this is some floodplain maps that my research team and I developed for the rivers of the Lake Champlain Basin. And these are indicating kind of the different flood levels and how they're interacting with, I believe this is Waterbury. And this has been used as a planning tool. This has been used by consultants to better understand and plan for restoration projects. And it really provides kind of a snapshot that wasn't there previously, and is sort of emblematic of the kind of work that I do, and the reason I do it is to really get these types of tools out there to help us as Friends of the Mad River, to help you as citizens to kind of understand where the water is potentially in the landscape, and to do better science as well. So my story starts very similar to a lot of other people, which I didn't grow up in the Mad River Valley, like many of us, but I grew up actually coming here in the summers. And this is a picture, that's my dad about 30 years ago. We would go creeking, we called it, right? We would go, and one of our favorite activities was lunch at the Warren store, and we'd walk up and down the creek. And that is, when I actually reflect on it, that is honestly kind of how I got intrigued about rivers, and specifically about sort of the physical landscape that rivers create. And we would walk up and down these creeks, and it was one of my favorite things to do, and look at just the features and the structures that were in the river. And I subsequently went to Dartmouth College and was introduced to a professor, and he was like, I'm a fluvial geomorphologist. I said, you're what? Right? And basically once I learned what that was and I got engaged in it, I was smitten, because it connected both my scientific interest, which I was very much a kiddo interested in science, but also that sort of connection to the landscape, to understand why do we see the form that these rivers take. And that was really what kind of hooked me and drew me in. And from then on, I studied fluvial geomorphology and really kind of tried to understand the physical and ecological processes that create, again, the landscape that we see, but kind of layered on top of that, right, the kind of the human impacts, right, the roads and the dams and all of those other features on the landscape. So my studies took me a lot of different places, right? So some of it was in the Northeast, but I went to a lot of different schools. I took on a lot of different projects, and it was exposed to a lot of different systems. And this is kind of really important, especially as a scientist, to understand how different systems function and how different systems work. But what it also did for me was kind of opened up my eyes to all the different sort of water-related challenges that exist, right? And so, as I said, so much of my work is really driven by my desire to do better science, to create more effective management tools. That management question is really variable. Here in Vermont, right, as we know, it's hugely driven by flooding and flood hazards, as well as water quality. When I worked for my PhD, I went and worked on the Yampa River, and that was the job that was the office I got to go to every day. And I'm awestruck by the setting, right? And the Yampa River is a tributary of the Colorado River, and it's the largest unregulated tributary. And it's a really special place for a lot of reasons, in part because because of that natural wild hydrology, it maintains a really kind of unique ecosystem that's been largely decimated in a lot of other parts of the Colorado. So there's native and endemic fish species that are threatened in the Yampa, and there's really great habitat there. The riparian ecology is much more intact than other areas. And these are challenges that sort of my eyes were opened up to. And so the work that I did out there was largely driven by those challenges, the limited amount of water that exists, the riparian ecology that's threatened. And because the Yampa River is, this untapped resource in a land where there's not very much water to access, there's a lot of demands for water in the Colorado River Basin. And so my work there was largely driven by this desire to sort of not only document what's going on, but also to better understand how the flow regime, or how much water is in the river, structures this place and structures this habitat, so that when there are applications to withdraw water from this river, because there will be as we move into a drier future, and as these demands grow and grow on the Yampa River, there's science to back up why taking out so much water from the river will actually degrade this ecosystem. So that was the kind of work I did out there. We moved back to Vermont in 2017, and when you kind of come to a new place, right, the management goals shift. And here, again, as I said, I started to work on floodplains and asking the question, what do floodplains do in terms of providing us improved water quality and enhancing flood resiliency. And this is a picture on the Winooski River in Cabot. There's an undergraduate student of mine, Josephine Rainey, who recently graduated and is now working as a consultant and a water resource engineer. And this is just downstream of the Cabot Dam that blew out during the July 2023 floods. And for part of this project, we were looking at sort of what the response was in the river downstream, what the water quality implications were. And what I wanted to show about this picture is not just the work that we've been doing here in Vermont, again, to kind of understand the implications of water quality and flood resiliency, but also to highlight the fact that through my work here in Vermont, I've also been, and at the University of Vermont, I've also been able to kind of pay it forward. So much of what I've done with my research, right, was inspired by all these professors I interacted with and folks along the way. And you know that one of the most rewarding parts of my work is not just sort of that better and more effective management of our rivers, but is also sort of engaging and inspiring and training these next generation students. And then I also really enjoy being on the river. I live right next to a river, just as many of us do, and we take the opportunity to take our kiddos out on the river, and it's a huge part of my husband and I's daily life, and what we want to sort of instill in our children. And this is on the Usumacinta River, on the border of Mexico and Guatemala. And it was a completely different ecosystem than we'd ever been in and had its own challenges, but it was an amazing experience that we got to go and travel and sort of share that with our kids and other kids actually. And just be that a big part of our life. Thank you.
And just to close this out, some final thoughts from me. Millbrook is healthy with thanks to nature and man working together. August 5th, 2020.
So with that, that is all from our presenters. If you can join me in just giving them a round of applause. They may be available, some of them might have to run, so if you have questions, maybe you can track them down or grab an email if you just want to hear more stories. It has really resonated with me hearing like these various stories tonight about how much each of our individual stories are, sharing them is a form of art. We're talking about this river that connects us, but also these stories that connect us and the parts of other people that we see in ourselves as we learn about different people's childhoods or their experiences. And so I know that we're going to be open here for a little while, and happy to answer questions or just connect or just chat. And we'd love to actually hear some of your all stories about this river, all rivers, all waters. But thank you for taking some time on a snowy evening to come out, and thanks to Sam for the invitation to come and share together. So thank you.
Thank you.